Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Karnika Seth and I am a cyber lawyer and I practice in the High Court and Supreme Court of India and High Court of Delhi. And today we will be talking about the module 9 of the e-Pathshala project, which is new cyber crimes. There are various forms of new emerging cyber crimes. And we will be focusing on those for the time being here. The advent of internet is such that we've seen a lot of change in the way people communicate online, the way people work and entertainment, and also we see a shift in the way crime is committed. In the society today we see a lot of criminals, not only offline, but we also find that a lot of cyber criminals percolating in society today. A lot of crime prevails with the help of tools which are softwares or gadgets. People are committing crimes. It's easy for them to conceal their true identities, and considering the anonymous nature of the internet, very easy to spoof identities using some hide IP or other softwares, and that becomes quite a challenge for the law enforcement. And many crimes which used to be offline earlier have now become online. And if we see the Norton cybercrime report of 2013, the cybercrime is a growing problem globally, and the global direct cost of cybercrime was about US dollars 113 billion, and the average cost per victim is estimated to be 298 US dollars in 2013. So, with the glaring figures, you see the new cyber crimes and offences, they are affecting the different sections of society, right from individual to a global level. Among the new cyber crimes, we find online defamation, many data mining frauds are happening, phishing frauds. What are these terms? Basically, phishing is a term which is financial fraud, somebody who is trying to send a mail, for example, which is in a way directed at stealing or concealing, basically taking away or extracting some sensitive information about a credit card or a particular person's net banking ID, and then that is taken from a victim, and then monies are debited illegally. That's known as phishing. If the same thing is done using an SMS, it amounts to smishing, and if the same thing is done by using a voice over internet protocol, it amounts to wishing. So, these are certain hybrid versions of phishing which exist today. Skimming is by far very common, because here even at petrol stations we have seen instances of using a skimmer to clone a credit card. Those kind of frauds are emerging. ATM frauds are emerging, money laundering frauds. These are the kind of problems. Cyber stalking, harassing somebody illegally, posting certain information which is sensitive about a person to defame the person, causing any sort of harassment by taking away or stealing somebody's identity, causing identity theft, cheating by personation, forgery using computers, terrorism, or as we call it cyber wars. These are some new phenomena we see on the internet. Hate speech, which is ill will speech, child pornography relating to obscene content using children, child grooming, which is preparing the child for pornography, and invasion of privacy, piracy of music, films and other copyrighted materials. Now, these are some crimes which we see on the internet today. Online defamation is taking a large proportion of cybercrime cases today, because we feel that there is a lot of insider thefts happening, and the insiders are also causing defamation in corporate and companies or other cultures. What is happening is that individual level, even children, they do not realize what they are writing on social media. If it is abusive in terms of language, then it could amount to online defamation. Section 500 of the IPC deals with this offence, and Section 66A of the IT Act also deals with the same offence, and the punishment is up to 3 years and also fine. There have been few cases like the SNC Pneumatics case, where an employee who made defamatory materials to or emails to his colleagues and other officers of the management, an ex parte injunction was granted in this case, where the court restrained him from circulating or transmitting any such information which is defamatory to the company. In another, there have been many other cases on defamation. By and large, if there is a defamatory mail sent, then when we talk about jurisdiction will be determined based on where this crime is committed or where it is coming from, because in cases of defamation, both the jurisdictions become important. Data mining, now that's another offense which we see on the rise today, because Section 66 deals with this, hacking or stealing away somebody's confidential information or proprietary information of a company amounts to data mining or stealing of information, and hacking will fall under computer related offences under Section 66 of the IT Act. The use of various tools could be possible: use of surveillance mechanisms, worms to infect a network, or softwares, keyloggers, they all could be used for any data mining purposes. In one of the cases, Abhinav Gupta versus State of Haryana, an employee was alleged to have hacked into a system of his past employer and stolen confidential information and shared it with the competitor, where he subsequently joins. The court gave a restraint order against him, restraining him from transferring or disclosing any confidential information to the competitor company. So there are several other cases in this area of IPR law, as we call it, which conjuncts with the cybercrime law, and in many cases what is being questioned is also the privacy of an employee or the surveillance powers of the company and the use of consent procedures. Spoofing is another offense, which is to conceal one's true identity in order to hide one's true person or self, and the internet protocol address is usually like a home address given to any particular building or a house in a locality. IP address is allocated to every computer on the internet, and therefore using of any softwares which hide or just conceal this identity and garb on a new identity using anonymous proxy servers or other websites which allow this to happen, or softwares, amounts to spoofing. And in there have been reported cases where for example, in Pranav Mitra's case, there was arrest in Mumbai for spoofing and cheating a businessman based in Dubai, and extortion of about quite a lot of amounts involved in extortion in this case. Phishing also is a financial crime here. When it talk about financial crime, as I said, that a lot of banks are now making people aware, the customers aware of using best practices to safeguard their net banking passwords. Don't, for example, they say that don't reveal your password or ATM pins on the phone or otherwise by pop-up windows which are emerging online. Only always type either write web address of the bank before you use net banking. There's a lot of phishing websites and emails being sent in the garb of being genuine banks, but they're not, which extract a lot of information which is dangerous, and if it is financial information is leaked, then that is used to commit the crimes. Now, cheating by personation is also an offence under Section 66D of the IT Act, which gives about punishment of about 3 years and fine or both. 66C punishes identity theft, where a criminal is using a unique identification, a word or a signature or a password to commit a crime. This is again punishable with imprisonment of up to 3 years and fine of 1 lakh or both. Now, this is basically the way phishing is conducted. It has 2 or 3 stages. One where maybe there is a fake call or an SMS sent, which asks you to send some information about yourself or the credit card numbers and the passwords, and once that is taken, illegal debits are made using that information from the customer's accounts. Skimming is therefore a problem which is a new emerging problem, and therefore in order to avoid credit card frauds and skimmers, the credit card companies are now proposing biometric based chip based cards which allow better protection, and it's not easy to clone those cards. That's the reason why these are being introduced by the banks. And in many cases, certain criminals are even arrested for booking air tickets using stolen credit cards which were sold at reduced prices. And these problems, these offences are covered by section 66C, 66D of the IT Act, read with section 419 and 420 of the IPC. Money laundering. Money laundering basically means hiding the real source of origin of money, which is illegal, and diverts into other businesses which make it appear like legal. So money laundering is making the money, the black money, into white money, as they call it, and the money launderer can easily do so by transferring monies online using fake IPs and hiding practices to avoid the trail. So in India we have the Prevention of Money Laundering Act which applies, and RBI has provided rules to maintain the records of all the payment transactions, and even their wire transfers are documented, and the transactions are routed through banks. So everything is allows an audit, and everything is accounted for. Now, cyber stalking, that's a term which is basically to harass someone. It is to say the digital footprints are taken in, and somebody is trying to embarrass another person, can post any information on a blog or a website or an email or an SMS. And younger generation, we also see a new term called sexting, which means to share information which may be of an obscene nature among children or even adults. And that's something which is of concern, because if a message is very obscene in nature, publishing or transmitting it may amount to a crime under the IT Act, which is publishing of obscene information under 67 of the IT Act. It might even amount to cyber stalking if the person receiving it is harassed by the message. So therefore cyber stalking and sexting and cyber pornography, all these sections could also get invoked in a particular case depending on the facts. And in certain cases, spamming could be involved, fake blog could be involved, or identity theft may be involved. These are the cases where somebody is trying to harass another person by putting insulting comments, or it could be of such nature as well, which will be defamatory. So these cases are covered by section 66A of the IT Act, and a complaint can be filed under this section as well, and it could be coupled with section 509 of the IPC, which talks about outraging the modesty of a woman. And recently there have been cases of cyber stalking. There have been reported cases, but the Unknown versus Jawaharlal Nehru University, lately in 2013, the High Court of Delhi dismissed an appeal which challenged an order passed by the single judge of the High Court, where the appellant had challenged the punitive measure of compulsory retirement which was imposed on this appellant because he was found guilty of sexual harassment. The High Court was it was held that there was no perversity in the order passed by the inquiry committee, and that was upheld even later. So he was guilty of cyber stalking and harassment to the complainant. The next issue which emerges here is the computer forgery. The new emerging cyber crimes also include as a figment the computer forgery, because very easily printers, scanners and software could be used to alter the real information or documents which are authentic. And a lot of sections come into play, like sections 463 of IPC, which provides punishment for making false documents or false electronic records and cause damage to the persons, which could cause a person to give away property or execute a contract in order to defraud, and so that this fraud may be committed. The cyber criminals very often use such devices to commit computer related forgeries. Therefore, it's important to keep very strong passwords and encryptions on their systems to avoid any intrusions, unauthorized access, or even forgeries. In the Abdul Karim Telgi scam case, for instance, the accused used the counterfeiting of stamp papers and postage stamps, and the police seized the counterfeit share certificates for almost 34.47 crores. In the Parliament attack case, similarly, the accused created fake identity passes using his laptop and computer, and the forgery could also include data diddling, adding of little amounts of money or other information to a particular a particular database, or causing a salami attack, adding of charges, for example unauthorized charges onto certain database, which amounts to illegal forgeries and illegal intrusions into systems or even data. In a salami attack, usually a customer could be even charged small amounts which would go unnoticed, and section 463 makes this an offence which is punishable with imprisonment of up to 2 years or fine or both. And section 66 of the IT Act also would apply to this offence, giving a punishment of about 3 years and 3 years and fine or both. Okay, the next issue with or the problem of e-crimes is the cyber terrorism, and I think it's by far the most important one which any country would face. Cyber wars, terrorism and riots, this is something which is causing a big concern world over, and the use of computers or internet to create a havoc or a terror among the critical computers or the network infrastructure of a country is something which this addresses. And if there is intrusion into unauthorized intrusions into the computer systems of a nation, which may lead to stealing away of sensitive information, or illegal attacks which may lead to riots or damage of a public utility service. These are acts which will be covered by the cyber terrorism section, which is section 66F of the IT Act. Now, this prohibits cyber terrorism and punishes it with the most stringent punishment of imprisonment up to life. And the cyber terrorists, they could even hack, as we say, a plane's system by remote means, and these days law enforcement is using the systems for robotics, or the law enforcement is looking at exploring drones, use of drones to curb riots and other problems, which is a step in the right direction. But in order to avoid problems, it is the right use. But if a cyber criminal uses such gadgets or mechanisms in order to create a havoc in a country, it amounts to cyber terrorism. The cyber criminals often use malware, viruses to disrupt the country's defense systems. And in Estonia, way back in 2007, it was witnessed where a lot of hackers hacked the critical infrastructure of that particular country. And the critical infrastructure is such that even India is very careful on that, because we have the nodal agency, which is CERT-in, that is responsible for detecting the security threats and deploying the incident response mechanisms to combat these attacks. In a recent incident, we also noticed that the website of the CBI itself was hacked. It was reported to be hacked by Pakistani cyber criminals. This is as reported in the news. So we have to combat these problems, and in order to do so, these provisions are very important. But the implementation also depends on a lot of other factors, such as the training in the law enforcement and the availability of the right equipment and the right manpower to deal with it. Now, in US also we see cyber armies or cyber provisions which help and assist the government in keeping a tighter surveillance and a stricter security regime. So is in the case of UK, where the Parliament has passed the Terrorism Act in 2000 after the September 11 attacks, and the Proceeds of Crime Act and Serious Organized Crime Agency was set up in 2006. Now, in the case of the Section 66F, it is mainly divided into two parts. The first part mainly deals with somebody trying to threaten the sovereignty, integrity or security of the nation, causing a denial of service access and destruction of property or service, public service. The next area of the next provision is about the person who knowingly or intentionally penetrates or accesses a computer resource without the authorization or exceeds the authorization granted, which is gaining the access and then stealing away sensitive information of that nation and using it to its detriment. So that is something which is again punishable. It covers a lot of things. Those information could be used to injure the interest of sovereignty of India, friendly relations with other states, public order, decency, morality, or defamation, incitement to an offence. Such aspects have been covered by Section 66F of the IT Act. And a person who is a cyber terrorist, who is a cyber terrorist, could even be punished with imprisonment of life. That is something which is a non-bailable offence as well. Now, India is not a signatory to the Cybercrime Convention, although it has signed the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime. And as we see today, the way of working of the whole convention is such that since we don't have a cybercrime convention, the same provisions may not be effective enough to deal with cybercrime cases as they would deal with other general crime cases. Therefore, a more effective mechanism is required to be dealt with in cases of cybercrime in particular. Now, when we talk about hate speech, for example, now hate speech is a term which connotes writing or posting on the internet, which is aimed at intimidating or harassing a person or a group or defaming him or her, and it is written with a special prejudice or a bias towards a gender or a community, and it could be political, it could be class based. And in India, Article 19(2) of the Constitution allows reasonable restrictions on this right to freedom of speech and expression. We do have this right to freedom of speech in India, but then we have reasonable restrictions in order to protect our nation's sovereignty and security, and therefore the government can place restrictions in light of this fact, and for this purposes notified under Article 19(2) of the Constitution. Section 66A of the IT Act provides punishment for sending any offensive messages through communication devices or computers. Any person who sends any information which is harassing to someone or intimidating or causing any injury or hatred or ill will, that amounts to a hate speech, and which is punishable offence under this particular section with imprisonment of up to 3 years and fine. In many cases, we've seen this provision has been invoked, and in certain dowry cases or dowry prohibition cases or other cases of where this particular intimidation has been used. Electronic evidence can be used of such SMSs or emails and produced in the court of law to prove how hate speech was actually sent using computers. And this is very rampant today, and the form of electronic evidence which is printed out of a particular screenshot could also be produced in evidence and proven to support one's case. Child pornography is yet another problem which it is an offence which is prohibited world over, and is coupled with child grooming or sexual exploitation of children. That's a very heinous crime, and we we are signatories to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and we also adhere in India to these norms. And Section 67B in this IT Act prohibits child pornography explicitly, and any kind of publishing or transmission of, or even creation, collecting, seeking, browsing, saving of such content which is obscene related to child pornography is banned and is completely prohibited. Any person who actually does that is punishable with imprisonment for a term which extends to about 5 years, and also fine of up to 10 lakhs. It's a non-bailable offence and a cognizable one. Now Section 66E deals with invasion of privacy, which is an offence of a different kind, where the private area of a particular person is captured, or the pictures could be captured in the form of video or even images, and those images could be then used to exploit the person or blackmail the person, and that could be used for commercial gains which are illegal gains, and that is punishable with imprisonment which could extend to about 3 years, or fine not exceeding about 7 lakh rupees, or both. Now we also have Section 67A of the IT Act, where imprisonment up to 5 years and fine is there, particularly attracted in the cases of MMSs, and where a lot of times hidden webcams could be capturing the image of a person and without his or her consent, and therefore if transmission of any or publication of any sexually explicit content is banned by this particular section. Other provisions of offences, there were many in the IT Act as per the Amendment Act of 2008. These cover the breach of confidentiality by a public officer, theft of data or laptops by Section 66B, and there have been many other provisions which have been added under the IT Act following the amendments. But yes, piracy of music, and I think this is something which is becoming of another concern, especially in the media industry, stealing away of copyrighted material, especially music, films, which is very rampant today. Section 81, a proviso to IT Act, excludes copyright cases from general bar to interference by courts in cybercrime cases. Therefore, if a case involves copyright, one can go to a civil court, but if it involves mainly IT Act, go to the adjudicating authority in cases of compensation, and the general criminal cases, it will fall under cybercrime. So in order to protect the copyright of owners on the internet, it is important that there are encryption mechanisms used in proper channels. Registration of copyrights could also be opted for, and in order to check piracy, report abuse buttons are there, and anti-piracy raids are being usually conducted, and the third party content posted by users could also make the main website owner liable if this particular content is pirated and it is posted with his or her consent. This is something which is important, because ISPs could be liable. At least they could be secondarily liable, and therefore the use of consent and knowledge, these are concepts which will determine whether they are really ISP would be liable or not, how much monitoring is the ISP doing, and how much due diligence is it maintaining. In one of the cases of copyright, there was a Super Cassette Industries versus MySpace, where MySpace was using this particular portal to post certain music, and the users were posting some pirated clips and movies and latest songs, and Super Cassette Industries, whose copyright was violated, allegedly they filed a case against MySpace. The court considered Section 79 of the IT Act, which deals with the ISP liability, and the main question was whether this defendant would gain from the exclusion of liability under Section 79. In short, exclusion will not apply if there was prior knowledge or consent of the defendant, that is the the particular intermediary, and if on receiving the knowledge on actual notice, if they did not take down this particular infringing material, then they would be certainly liable in this case. So, in this particular case at hand, the rights management tool was actually being provided to the copyright owners to check and to register themselves and to check if there was any infringing material on their website, but they did not take any proactive measures themselves to check and detect if there was anything infringing that the viewers had posted. Now, this therefore these sections were very important. Section 51A(2) of Copyright Act and other sections were discussed, whereby the court actually considered section 81 proviso also of the IT Act, which enables the courts to adjudicate the matter as copyright is outside the purview of the general bar on interference in cases which fall under the ambit of the IT Act. So, in short, this case is important from the point of view of copyrights and how the intermediary liability has to be determined. But at the prima facie stage, it held that on considering the evidence on trial, it will be seen whether they are also liable for primary infringement, but yes, as a prima facie measure, on a prima facie footing, secondary liability could be imputed on this on the defendants. In order to summarize this particular module, I would like to say that the cybercrime, the new emerging cybercrimes are emerging in various forms. Not only are they emerging in the way that we have known them in the last decade, but also new hybrid versions, for example, phishing converting into smishing or wishing, and new other new kinds of frauds and crimes in the corporate world, for example, data mining, keylogger insertions, and spreading of malwares and other piracy which is prevailing on the net. Now, these kind of problems are there, and not only that, social media related platforms like crimes are also emerging, because social media is not only a medium which people are using to communicate or to get entertained or to connect with each other, but criminals are finding a way into the social media in order to commit crimes, spreading of malware, stealing of personal information, causing cyber stalking and other harassment attacks. So, I think more cyber awareness would help to spread the best practices and how to keep one's personal passwords and other important information secure, and one must learn how to safely use the internet medium and protect ourselves in general online while we are working or we are using the internet for leisure. Thank you.